Welcome to the Difference Maker Show, sharing positive stories that matter and inspiring you to make a bigger difference. So what difference can one person make? How does one person with disabilities transform the lives of thousands? And what can each one of us do to create positive change? Hi, I'm Lynn Sanders, your host, and I am so glad you're here. Our topic is It Starts With One, Causes for Change. I'm excited to have you meet an inspiring leader, someone I've seen in action personally because our family joined her years ago on 3 different healthcare missions to Ecuador. Her name is Zully Alvarado. Zully is the founder of the nonprofit Causes for Change International, which impacts communities in the areas of health and education and directs them towards economic self-sufficiency in the Americas. Zully has created cultural exchange opportunities, organizing and leading medical missions to serve the poor in the South and Central Americas, where she was born. Zully is an entrepreneur, educator, designer, and philanthropist. She's devoted her life to bettering the lives of children, women, and persons with disabilities, making their communities more accessible from the Chicago area and Gary, Indiana to Ecuador. She also created the first retail business incubator for artists in Chicago and mentored other aspiring entrepreneurs. Zully has served on numerous boards to provide leadership for those with disabilities. Her accomplishments were recognized by Chicago Magazine as a Chicagoan of the Year in 2011, and she also received the Women Entrepreneurs of the Year award from Avon. So, without further ado, let's welcome Zully Alvarado.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. This is fantastic. Thank you for such a great introduction. Really, like, what was that?
No, you have so many accomplishments, and you're so inspiring to me and so many thousands of people. Your story is an amazing one. And as you know, I've said that we've got to get this story out into a book. So to just share some of your story with us, I know will be very inspiring for others. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to bring causes for change out to the world?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Yeah, my story is, well, it's going back to childhood, I guess. I was born, as you mentioned, in the coastal region of Ecuador in a small village. It wasn't really even a village. It was just a sporadic houses here and there of families. And I recall that as a little girl, I just saw myself playing or being like everybody else, never knowing that there was something different or unusual about me until a missionary priest arrived in my village. And I think I was probably around 60 or 70 years of age at the time. And he saw there was some interest that he took upon me because I wasn't playing with the other children. And, you know, typical children at recess, they play, they run and all that. But every time that he would show up in my school, I was always pretty much at the same spot, not playing, until he asked my teacher what was wrong. And then that's when discovered that I had polio as a child at the age of 2, and I was left paralyzed. And so it was very minimal physical abilities that I had. And so, but my parents also at the same time just wanted me to be like everybody else and not exclude me from my other siblings. I had 3 other siblings at the time. But this priest, you know, one of the things that he saw was that he knew the likelihood of a country like Ecuador at the time, very impoverished, and from a village, most likely my life would not be a very productive, shall we say, or very successful one. So, and at that time, what happened was the ship Hope, which was a medical ship from medical ship from the U.S. And this was President Kennedy at the time, had just launched, and docked in the waters of Guayaquil. At the same, it just happened. All these mystical things happened at the same time, and it's like, okay. And this priest took me to this ship for medical care, to be evaluated. And then that's what everything began, that they diagnosed him that if I stayed in the country, I would be paralyzed for the rest of my life. And the lack of nutrition, the lack of so many things of healthcare, that not to expect me to live beyond my teen years. And so that's when he took it up on himself to bring me to the US and be seen at Shriners Hospital. But so many things never turn out as we usually imagine they would. At the time, he thought it was just going to be a temporary thing and just take me to Shriners, get the surgeries needed, and voila, head back home. It didn't happen like that. I was when we arrived in a cold, wintry day in Chicago. Of course, I had no idea what winter was. I was carried here like a rag doll everywhere with summer clothing, and here's the middle of winter, February of '65, and so that's all I remember at the time. And just, of course, saying goodbye to my family, to just everything was just shock, such trauma for me that I just like it caused me to have so many defense mechanism to be able to block really what I now say is like to really become. I remember in college, I used to say I had become as hard as a rock. Like I couldn't even cry because of the traumatic incidents in childhood that I had to be separated so many times with different, not only my biological family, but later on with here and there with the families that I was placed with here. And then of course the missionary priest that, he died in my early teens. And so all of that left me pretty much taking care of myself when I turned 16 and beyond.
How old were you when you first came here, Zully? You were very young.
Yes, I was. I think it's 8 or 9 years of age when I was brought. But imagine at that age, even here comparable to a child of the US who has had so many opportunities of growing up with love and, with toys, running water, electricity, all they would consider abundance, which I did not have, or even a toilet that I did not have. I didn't know what was bathtub was, none of that. Or even I remember the first day the family wanted to go and buy me some socks. I had never owned a pair of socks on my own. So all those kind of things. So for a child of the village, it was more like someone that was, I would say, probably a 4 or 6 year of mental and social age versus really an 8 or 9 year old child. So I was really, I would say, delayed. Comparable, not necessarily if I would compare to a child in the village, I would say, other than the physical, but cognitively, I will say, and socially, I would say I was delayed.
And so how did you get from being a poor child, coming to this country and having to learn everything about the country culturally, and then be able to go into college and become a leader? It's a big, big journey. Yes. What happened in that span of time from getting healed to empowering yourself and empowering others?
Yeah, I think one of the messages I recall getting from my mother, even after so many other types of messages, some were very painful, but one of the key message I would say that she said instilled in me was make sure that I got an education and follow the teacher with my eyes. Even though I didn't know the language, that I had to follow my teacher out of respect, whatever she went up, down, that I had to follow it, make sure I always had the education. And the other thing that I think is part of the culture too, to remember always, that I was the one sort of the breaking the barriers, to come to this country. And I was carrying the family name. It's an Alvarado, and to have pride as an Alvarado. And I think that for a child, no matter what age, that I have that to carry that pride and make them proud that no matter how I was, that it was up to me to have that education and carry that family name. And someday, hopefully others would follow. And that's pretty much, I think, the message. The other message, I think, was the families that raised me here in the US. And in the history books that I've read all along about the country, about entrepreneurial, how the country was developed. I really loved history. I love biographies. And of course, the family, like I mentioned, the family here being of German descent and Croatian. They didn't speak any Spanish. And of course, they did their darn. I remember now that we're approaching the holidays, I remember my first Christmas, they really tried hard to make me feel, I guess, at home. So they had purchased a piñata. I had no idea what a piñata was. Really? In Ecuador, I've never had that. And so all of a sudden I'm told to hit this thing, and I had never, and then get on the floor to pick up candy or something like that. And I was like, I had no understanding of the concept, but they tried. That's a Mexican, more of a Mexican tradition, but
Oh, I
they
see.
had not read any of that. But that was my experience of the holidays, and having finished it just Halloween too. That was another experience for me that I had never dressed. I was told the family of the home dressed me as a little clown, and for me, a clown is not a positive thing. So, and then they sent me to go into the around the neighborhood asking for candy. So I felt like I have to beg. They can't afford candy. So those are the kind of cultural awareness. So that made me strong to learn quickly, to really be immersed right away, immersed into the culture, into the ways. But the families, like I said, they tried, they really tried, but they just did not. Ecuador was not a country that was heard of. It was at that time, it was very small, not many. Now you hear more about it because of the technologies and the studies and all we have. But at that time, Ecuador, you did not hear. It was just a tiny country in Latin America. That's pretty much it, right?
Wow.
You know, so yeah, so they
So
had,
lead
like I
us
said,
through, how did you get then through college, and all the challenges to get to becoming an independent business leader?
yeah.
Were you helped along the way? People noticed that you were really making an effort to learn?
I think one of the things, because again, at that period of time, I was alone. That was the period of time when the father, the priest who brought me to this country, died. And I was left alone. I had to find another family to take care of me, to sign for my papers. Immigration, I've always, even though I was a young person, that I knew it was my responsibility. I had to take on the responsibility of my life for my life. And if I wanted to remain in this country, I had to make sure that I was always legal, that my paperwork was always in order, that again, remembering what my mother said, study. And so I'd always make sure that I had good grades, that because that was what's going to get me ahead, and work, make sure that I always worked. I remember even I learned the skills of sewing, embroidering at an early age. So that was a way to make some monies, for here, there, for some department stores, making some samples, prom dresses, a variety of things. So that allowed me to save enough to be able to buy my books, to get different things. But I think having good grades also helped me get scholarship. So I was very fortunate because, like I said, otherwise it would have been extremely difficult. So getting a scholastic scholarship, I wanted to get away from the Chicagoland area. I thought, because I felt that I wanted to get away from my story. I wanted to get away from people that knew me or knew of me, because when I first arrived, the newspaper wrote about me and all of that. And I feels like I'm tired of always being seen as a charity case. I didn't want to be seen as a charity case. I felt like I needed to get away from Chicago. So I went to school in Minnesota, from cold to colder,
Mhm.
So, but that's where I got my undergrad, and I wanted to pursue a career that I would be of help to others. Just in similar, as I had an, I would say, speech impediment at the time because of my accent, and I wanted to deal with my accent. So I wanted to be in a profession that I would work with the deaf, somehow sign language, but in my college, they did not have that as a major. So I ended up majoring in speech and language, speech pathology and audiology. That's what the degree is. And so I pursued that, and I was like, okay, now I can know how to make my tongue placement properly, so I don't mispronounce certain words, enunciate correctly, all of that. So that's how I ended up dealing with part of my accent. I still have it at times; it comes out stronger than others. But I majored in speech and language, and I wanted to choose a career that I thought, because I always thought that someday I would go back to South America. I would go back to Ecuador and be of service there. But again, it did not turn out that way. That the time that I was planning on sort of graduating from college, I did, and I thought, now send all my belongings to South America, to Ecuador. So I sent everything, but I was like, hey, I have no money for my own airfare. So what do I do? What I did was, the best thing was I applied for graduate school. So I applied to graduate school and I got accepted. And so I went to 1 year in DePaul and pursued rehabilitation administration. And then another period, then I was accepted at the Erickson Institute in Loyola. So I went to school and also got my master's in early childhood education, child development. And that was the career. So it's like really abroad. I felt like liberal arts. I didn't want to just specialize in just one thing, kind of things, even though my degrees brought me all. It was also a way to Erickson, I think, helped me to deal with my own trauma, childhood traumas. And that was, I think, doing psychoanalysis, a variety of things that really helped me deal with all my things, all my
Wow.
issues.
So you really have a comprehensive education background, from your audiology and speech pathology to childhood education, your master's degree, and in the back of your mind, which I think everyone needs to recognize, is you recognize the importance of standing strong. And you came up with the title, the branding for your company, it starts with one. So talk a little bit more about that and how you went from all the degrees to creating your own nonprofit organization that we got to be a part of.
Yes. When I was in my late 20s, my disability got worse. And in that experience, finding doctors to help me and diagnose me, and pretty much came close to death. I would say I was pretty much in my deathbed.
Oh, no.
But something happened that caught me. One always turns to faith. Find the right what is for that will solve one's internal well-being. And so for me, the ultimate thing was to find the higher power, the universe, what I said, the universal law, that really the spiritual side of myself. And I think that in that search is what got me out and found the strength to continue to deal with all the chronic pain, the muscular weakness, all of that, and the final diagnosis that I was experiencing, which turned out to be post-polio. Prior to my acquiring that, no doctor could diagnose it. So now we know it's post-polio syndrome, which just deals with a lot of pain and a lot of muscle weakness, deterioration. And so that's what happened to me. So once I got out of that, I felt here I had an opportunity to live again. That was so the answer that's like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? So what can I do? And so that's when I thought my dream had always been two things. One is to, of course, be a fashion designer and be a contributor to the world that way. And the other was to be able to give back, to be able to be in the area of mission work, just like the priest that helped me. You always hear about paying back or something like that. I'm not crazy about that term because one can never pay back. But I can be a resource, I can serve, I can be a contribution. And that's what I wanted to be to children, particularly, and families. Children, I felt that I didn't want them to go through what I did, to be separated from their homeland, to be separated from their language, culture, their families. And so I suffered. And yes, it was very traumatic for me. And I don't know where I got all that strength, but also parents suffer, families, siblings suffer. I saw that the pain, I cannot imagine the pain that my mother and father experienced. Now that as an adult, my biological mother is still alive. So I get to share or talk with her about what it was like for her so that she too can find peace, because she always felt guilty. And because at that time we didn't have mail, we didn't have technology like we do now. So there was no communication. So her impression was, I hope that my daughter, wherever she's at, looking up in the heavens, that wherever she's at, that she doesn't think that I gave her away because I didn't want her. No, I gave her away because we really wanted her to live. And we wanted the best for her. We wanted her to get better. And so I get to hear her from her heart. And I think she's at peace now at her age. And I think that my father, he's deceased, and I think my father the same way, that he died in peace, knowing that I never held anything against him. Instead, that I showed appreciation, that I showed gratitude. And I think that that's how causes came to be, that I wanted to show that whatever, that I am grateful to the country that gave me birth, the family gave me birth, but also the country that gave me life. And I think the United States of America, this country, gave me the life, gave me the opportunities to thrive, gave me the health, gave me the education, and also the career and the opportunity to become an entrepreneur and to serve others. And that's really
wow. Well, I really love that, Zully, because what you're saying is so meaningful, that your parents, out of their love for you, had to give you up so that you could live and have nutrition and have education. And then your recognition of what they did to really ultimately help you, even though it was so painful at the time. And then to go back and give to those in Ecuador who need help. Tell us more about what you've done through Causes for Change. And then I'd like to go into what's facing people right now with disabilities.
Sure.
So,
Yes. Well, again, Ecuador has changed to some extent, the city, as we know, but through Causes, still always going back to, we go to areas that typically do not find doctors, nurses, especially at the time when we started 23 years ago. There was remote areas, again, even to the village where I was found, which I was placed, and went back, and it was, nothing had changed. And so it's really all began there, taking doctors, nurses, the medicines. And when we talk about medicines, it's not like the hard drugs, just the basic aspirin, ibuprofen, cottons, alcohol, just cough medicines, a variety of that. And then, of course, for people with disabilities who still have a hard time, that we've donated thousands and thousands of wheelchairs now as for crutches, a variety of equipment, started several dental clinics. I think we started about 5 dental clinics, but we didn't limit it only to Ecuador. We've also supported Costa Rica. We worked with another group of partners in creating units for youth with cancer, and 3 hospitals there, because again, the youth with cancer were being dumped at hospitals with the elderly who are already near death or dying. And here, when you have a young person, we want them to thrive, we want them to live, we want them to see hope, even though they may have cancer. And the same thing with Panama. We deliver thousands of wheelchairs to Panama, and we continue to provide education. We work with universities. So it's not only about giving, as you mentioned at the start, it's also about what kind of professions or fields, careers that we can offer the future generations. So we've worked with creating with different fields of study at the university, in this particular case with the University of Milagro in Ecuador, partnering with the university here in Chicagoland area, and in the area of social work, and the same thing with physical therapy. Those are 2 fields of study that I felt that were really lacking in Ecuador when we first started, and continue to visit. And I think now that we go back, as we continue, that we can now begin to feel that the physical therapist there now can feel as, okay, they can touch me. But because in the beginning, when I felt like, when I was seeing and observing, I said, I would not want to receive therapy from anyone, because it was a little bit different than I would be accustomed to therapists doing for a child or for an adult. It wasn't something that I would recommend. And so now I think that that's where we are with Causes. And of course, still changing, that we work in changing the laws, being part of that, not only in Ecuador, but here in the US. We have the Americans with Disabilities Act. And of course, we've been advocating really hard and making sure it's implemented, that spaces are accessible for all, not only here, but also in other countries. And particularly for me, and just as my heart is Latin America, that's closer. I think we can of course, the needs all around the world. But here is where I feel that right now that I can tackle.
I'd like you to take a moment to share with us how you have created teams of people, because obviously you say it starts with one, and then you have taken that one yourself and grown your impact with teams so that you have reached thousands of people. I remember our family participating in Ecuador, where lines of people were standing for hours to get free dental support and free medical support. What are some things that you can recommend, other people do to create teams? What did you do?
I think it all starts, with myself. It starts with one, as I say, whether it's the one person, one gift, one toy, and that starts with one toy, doing that one ask. But in terms of teams, I think it starts with what does the other individual want? We all want something, and what can they give? It's their talents. People always think, well, I'm not a doctor, I'm not in the healthcare profession. But I think one of the key things for us, it's more like, what is the country? Imagine yourself in a village with nothing. You may have your home, you may have, bamboo and bamboo house on stilts, if that. So what would be something that you can give that typically they would, in situations like that, may not have running water, may not have electricity. They cannot afford, if they can afford a meal, they cannot afford your basics like a toothbrush. So it's like in learning, teaching someone how to protect their, let's say, oral hygiene, the dental. So we focused on dental care because after the first year, the second year when we had our dental hygienist, we discovered that dental care was a major issue because people didn't know that that was important. They did not have toothbrushes. They did not have dental floss. That's a luxury. You know, we may not consider it a luxury, but it's a luxury for them there. Until recently, I think it was last year, the year before, in 2019, when the last trip I took, I got a message from someone saying, "Zully, will you be bringing toothbrushes?" I said, "Well, do you need toothbrushes?" And he says, "Yeah, there's a man here that he remembers you when you first came here to this village." And he said he still has this toothbrush and it's really getting old.
Oh,
It's
my
like,
God.
what all those years, imagine holding on a toothbrush for 20 some odd years and he's using the same toothbrush. I can imagine the bristles of the toothbrush lasting, but he still, you know, remember that. And that's what he had. That was such an important treasure for him to have that toothbrush and be able to take care of his mouth. So situations like that I think that it may cost $1, $2 here, and we can, to afford that. So that's how teams created from, let's look at our own selves. What is it that we can give? What do I know how to do? What do I know to do? Whether I know music, whether I know how to read, I know people, I appreciate all of that, creativity, the writing, just clapping, just bringing in sound. You yourself, when we said that we wanted, I needed children to have toys. When you provide dental care, you know what it's like here when you have tooth extraction, especially if you have more than one, and your experience at that you want that child to live with something and not remember the pain necessarily, or to be fearful of future medical care or doctors or visitors, but you want them to have a positive experience following. So toys, I felt that what it's like to not have a toy. I remember as a child and growing up in my first years of life, I didn't have a toy. Living in the orphanage, I did live in an orphanage for almost a couple of years. I remember going to sleep and having nothing to hold on to. That I wanted to make sure that a child have a toy. And fall asleep and feel, that someone loves them and someone cares for them, and there's something that's their own possession. So it starts with that one toy. So it's whether it's the one individual, one toy, one trip, whatever, one toothbrush. It starts with that one, the $1 that we always, ask for, to be able to, that buys so much.
And that's so beautiful. So that's what inspires me. You look at what each person can contribute. If you're not a doctor, that's okay. You go to people and you see what can they do to make a difference. And that's what makes a cause for change.
Yes.
Now, you've noticed there are challenges that are faced right now in the United States that I think we all could be aware of. Can you let us know what are some of the challenges right now faced by those with disabilities, and what can we all do to make sure they're included and that things are accessible to them?
Well, here in the U.S., I would say that again, we talk because many of us have to be locked in. I hate to say that because of the pandemic and healthcare, we're more vulnerable, and essentially because of immune system and still even though we advocated for the ADA to have transportation and we got all that, but now some cannot be vaccinated, so they cannot get on the bus, cannot get on the train. If some people are forced to wear masks, like myself, that I have to, my respiratory system will not be able to handle it. So if I'm already have a hard time with it and having put on a mask, makes things worse, makes my lungs work harder than they ever are. So those kind of things, one has to think about that. It's not about not wanting to accommodate, or it's not that one doesn't care. It's just more like, how can I protect myself? Well, I'll protect you too. So it's forcing us to stay indoors. And it's forcing us to, and I say, how can we ask ourselves, how can we deal with our own mental health, our own emotional well-being when we're ready? We have fought so hard to be able to have the freedoms, to have the abilities to get jobs outside of our homes. And Yes, some of us, like myself, I did want to work from home because of the nature. I do require periodic rest here and there. I do need require to lie down more frequently than others. So yes, I want to work from home, but I can also work 24 hours. I can work at midnight. I can work, I function better at night than I do early in the morning. Early in the morning is probably more listening to writing messages, but at night is where my creativity and everything else happens. So I have the flexibility. I love working from home and I want that, but some other people cannot do that. They want their way out. They want to, be able to get outdoors for recreation. So that's really missing here, I would say, in the U.S. To be able to work. Now that we look at December 3rd being International Disability Awareness Day, around the globe, that we really need to look into. So how is our own attitudes towards people with disability, towards people who are different, towards people that, we have to look at the visible disabilities as well as the non-visible disabilities. Not everybody is like me, who's that so obvious, like the wheelchair, but it's not just the wheelchair. You don't know what else is going on with my body. So that's we always have to think. It's not just that the physical. Reminding people about we have the deaf, the blind, the cognitive, the intellectual, the sensory, neural, all of those people with cancer, people with a variety of chronic illnesses and disabilities. When we talk about international, again, it's international awareness, it's still the very basics, education. Now with the technology, we're leaving so many people behind. Not everybody can afford, if they cannot afford a toothbrush before, how can we expect them to catch up with us with not having a cell phone? How can we have, if they do not have a computer, if they do not have a way of system for communication? So I'm looking at how can we get them the basic, even students, just not even just children with disabilities or adults with disabilities, just the general population, even in Gary, Indiana, I recall people did not have, children did not have the tools that are needed for school. They did not have the laptops. They did not have the phones to be able to work from home or to get the education from home. So if we cannot get that here in the US, and that's just your general population. And I fought really hard in Gary because I was not hearing anything about children with disabilities. And it's like, why aren't we? Again, we are falling behind children, providing the right type of education or tools for children with disabilities. And so the worst situation in developing countries, like Ecuador, El Salvador, and some of the others.
So you're looking at both United States, people who have needs of disabilities, as well as the Americas, yes. Ecuador, Costa Rica. And you have created a little gift for everyone today that I want to share on the screen that can help them become more independent and gain more freedom and access. So share with us what you're doing.
Yes, one of the things, as I've always, because of the job situation and employment, I always believed in, like myself as a woman with a disability, as growing up with a disability, I love to be able to have my freedom for employment, be self-employed. So yes, you can have the job, but you can also create yourself and become a self-employed individual. So by going accesstofreedom.org, in part of Causes for Change, you can get this keys, what I call 6 keys to becoming self-employed, and learn what it takes. And then from there, once you acquire this, I think we can develop you into really becoming an entrepreneur. It requires other skills. Here we have some discipline, you can get some consultant jobs, a variety of things, you can get more support. But once you that's like becoming self-employed, you'll have some income. But as an entrepreneur, it requires a little bit different, just more creativity, I would say.
So let's repeat that website. It's accesstofreedom.org/checklist. I know.
Yeah, yes. Thank you for reminding me.
Checklist. So if you, and this is really for anyone, whether you have disabilities or not, we all work on ourselves. I hope people are listening to this, and people want to become free so that they don't have to depend on one job, but can have a way of creating their own income stream. Yes. And in addition to that, if you need help, you've got this wonderful resource right here, Zully Alvarado. So tell us, Zully, how can we support your mission? Where can we go to learn more?
Well, it starts with again, starts with one, or whatever, whether you want to volunteer, or of course, right now I'm really looking to take causes to the next level and turn it into a foundation. As again, we're always thinking of what's the next thing. We don't live forever. So causes for change, I'm asking to become a foundation. So I'm looking, of course, the financial resources for the projects that we are working on in terms of towards entrepreneurship, taking people to entrepreneurship, a mentoring program of young people, people with disabilities for entrepreneurship. So through causesforchange.org, people can donate through PayPal or through Zelle, through info at causesforchange.org. That's really the best source.
So for mentoring, for supporting causes, which is going to help people both in the United States
Oh,
and
definitely.
in the Americas.
Yes.
So that, as you can see, all that you've done, helping thousands of people, this will be put to good use.
Yes, and I just want to say that every dollar goes towards the projects, to specific projects, and individuals are kept informed. There's no staff, so it's 100% volunteerism. So I don't take funds from this. That's why I have to really work, so that people can really see that their monies are spent wisely and are provided for particular use. Right now, we're working on developing in partnership with an organization in Texas to create a clinic, an eye surgery clinic in Ecuador. And we also want to, because we've in transition the students that are the physical therapy department, now we need them to have a physical therapy center to work from. So we're combining that and creating that in the coastal area of Ecuador. As our first model project. Yeah.
So if anyone here, whether they're in the Americas or in the United States, who has ideas that they can bring to support Zully's organization, I would recommend definitely go to causesforchange.org and be able to support her mission. Before we go, I would like you to leave everyone with a special message. What would you like people to remember? What would be the most important thing to remember to empower them?
As you say, we all make a difference, and we matter, and it starts with us, with one. We're the one, and we're the ones that save. So all we have to do is just choose.
That's right. We can always be more than we think we are, right?
Yes, definitely. So, just put the power is within us, not outside of us. So
yes, that's a great one. Yeah. The power is within us, not outside. Thank you so much, Zully.
Thank you.
It's an important message, an important mission, and I want everyone to take a look at what she's doing and recognize that you do make a difference, as she said, and she's doing a great example for all of us. Thank you so much, and keep on making a difference, everyone. Thank you, Zully. I appreciate you. Bye-bye.